Inja marabala boya niya mogo go didenda. Inja marabala didenda. Inja marabala didenda. Inja marabala boya niya mogo go bagariga. Inja marabala. Inja marabala. Inja marabala bagariga. Inja marabala bagariga. Inja marabala bagariga. Inja marabala bagariga.
Honourable members and senators, distinguished guests, family and friends, good morning. This is the first ceremony of the opening of the 47th Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia. Dr. Aunty Matilda House-Williams, Ngambri and Ngunnawal Elder, will welcome us to the traditional country on which Parliament House stands. Aunty Matilda's son, Mr. Paul Giroa House, will complete the welcome to country on behalf of Aunty Matilda. Paul will then present a cultural gift to the Prime Minister before the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition respond to the welcoming address. Members and senators and their guests are then invited to attend a smoking ceremony outside on the forecourt. May I introduce Dr. Aunty Matilda House-Williams.
Stay here with me. Welcome. For the first time in Australia history, on the 12th of February 2008, the official opening of Australia's federal parliament began with a traditional welcome to country. I was privileged as a Ngambri woman and Wiradjuri person to welcome visitors to the land on behalf of all our people. For this opening, I sincerely welcome you, and now I will hand over all the responsibilities to my son Paul Giroa House. Thank you very much.
Mandangu Nama Wilai. Thank you, Mama Possum. Jumburuburu Marambang Naramarang Yilangalangbu Gibabango Wugabu Migaibu Diranilbang Mayin. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, young men, young women, distinguished guests. The Honourable Anthony Albanese, MP, Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Peter Dutton, MP, Leader of the Opposition, Senator Patrick Dodson, Special Envoy for Reconciliation and the implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, the Honourable Linda Burney, MP, Minister for Indigenous Affairs, Senator the Honourable Mullenderry McCarthy, Assistant Minister for Indigenous Australians. We acknowledge all Indigenous and non-Indigenous parliamentarians elected to the 47th Parliament of Australia. Yuandu Paul Giro House, Nadu Maradu Marai Biringo, Gujigango Nyambri Nurumbango Dara. My name is Paul Giro House. I was born here on Nyambri country at the Old Canberra Hospital. Nyari Njamali Balanama, Dr. Matilda Williams House, Maradu, Dirangambira, Rambi, Galari, Gulwara, Hollywood Aboriginal Reserve, Yass, Nyambri Nurumbango. My respects to my mother, Dr. Matilda Williams House, born and raised on Arambi, Mission Cowra, Hollywood Aboriginal Reserve, Yass, and Nyambri country. Respecting our old men, Henry Black Harry Williams, born in Namaji in 1837. His father, Jindamon Nonyong, was born at Wiriwa, Lake George, and was given a traditional burial here on country on the Murrumbidgee River in 1952. We honour our matriarchs and our patriarchs. Because of them, we can. Nyari Njamali Nyambri Gumal Wogalu Wallabala, Nunawa Nagariga, Wiradri Mujigang Yanambu Jayandu. My respects to Nyambri Gumal Wogalu Wallabala, Nunawa Nagariga, Wiradri elders past and present. Nari Njamarabu Mujigango Nurumbanjagu Nini Yidadu Mayin. My respects to all elders and people from all nations here today. Nadu Wudagabigi Balabambu Gubu Balagi Bangubu Guingulila Dumbali now Murawai Marambu. We listen to our ancestors, the old people. They show us the right path. Guingulila Wallamali now, Bilingali now, Yamamali now. They take care of us, they help us, they protect us. Mambawara, Naminyagu, Wadagabinya, Wadadaragu, Winingalagu, Baligu. Looking to see, listening to hear, and learning to understand. Yinjamara, Yinjamal Gijo. Respect, be gentle, be polite, be patient, give honour, take responsibility. Yinjamara, Widambira, Marandogobo, Giragobo, Yandogobo. Respect is taking responsibility for the now, the past, the present and the future. With this welcome to country, our main aim as local custodians is to establish an atmosphere of mutual respect through the acknowledgement of our ancestors and the recognition of our rights to declare our special place in the pre and post history of the region. The name Canberra is derived from the name of our ancestral group and people, the Nyambri. The name Canberra was gazetted on the 22nd of January 1884. Evidence of our occupation, our statehood, our ownership can be seen everywhere throughout the country. Our signature is in the land, not just our DNA. Muramaginya Yinjamara Muramuru Widambiradara. Living a respectful way of life cares for country. Yinjamara, Wingirumbanana, Nuru Balabua, Gua Gambira, Banganara Nara. Respect is in the fires that warms the camp and the possum skin cloak that shelters all. Yinjamara Bala Magam Nawa, Wijinga, Yina Wangara Daganda Baba Yiranigu. Respect is how women dig in the earth for yams. Yinjamara Magagiri Biringa Bogongo Dirida. Respect can be found in the journey of the Bogong moths in the mountains. Yinjamara Bala Bidada Bina Bina Ya Willa Willa Will. Wuru and Nurumbango. Respect is in the rivers and the breeze quietly moving through country. The law of the land says you must respect and honour all people and all parts of the country. With this welcome, we ask that you will respect the law of our country. Yinjamala Mayin Galangbu, Yandu Mayin Galangdu, Yinjamal Giri Yinyoga, give honour. Be respectful, be polite, be gentle and patient with all. Then people will respect you. Maragaladal, Wale Mayin, Mayin Galang. Hold fast to each other, empower the people. Yinjamara Yamba One, Muran Waginya, Buradure. Respect everything living and growing. Please look after the land and the rivers, and the land and the rivers will look after you. Australia has recently celebrated Reconciliation and NAIDOC Week with the themes Walangunmala Maramara Gurai, Be Brave, Make Change, Diriyawana Murawara Nawambira, Get Up, Stand Up, Show Up. We should reflect for a moment on the significance of this occasion by honouring the heroes among our First Peoples who over 234 years have maintained the integrity of our ancient connection to our lands against relentless forces to extinguish us by successive generations of colonisers. So many thousands of our people and these events are barely acknowledged in Australia's popular history, and they will never be forgotten by our First Peoples living today and for those who are yet to be born. Niani Gingo Yinjamara Wiradjuri Mulyalang. We honour our Wiradjuri elders, Nangar, Jimmy Clements and Johnny Noble, who walked Murada from Brungle Mission on track in 1927 to attend the opening of the Provisional Parliament House. We honour the First Nation leaders of the Pilbara and the Western Desert, the Mangu, who in 1946 led their people in Australia's longest ever strike, which broke the back of the oppressive pastoral feudalism. We honour the Yolngu people who fought against their dispossession and produced the Yirrkala Bark Petition in 1963, which hangs as a national treasure in Parliament House and led to this Parliament passing the historic Northern Territory Aboriginal Land Rights Act 1976. We honour the University of Sydney students led by the great Charles Perkins, who in 1965 with unstinting courage confronted the discrimination against our people across New South Wales in the Freedom Rides. We honour Vincent Lingari, who led the Gurindji people to walk off Wave Hill Station in the Northern Territory in 1966 in a fight against injustice and for recognition. An act of great bravery, which still stirs First Peoples into continuing our struggle for justice today. We honour Neville Bonner, the first Aboriginal person to be elected to federal parliament. A thorn in both sides of politics, in 1974, Senator Bonner moved an historic motion calling for the First Peoples to be compensated for their dispossession. We honour the Yungara owners of Nookambah Station, who in 1980 tried valiantly to stop the West Australian state from drilling for oil on their sacred land. We honour the First Peoples who wrote the Barunga Statement in 1988, which also hangs in this Parliament. We honour the Pitjantjatjara people, who were eventually compensated in 1991 for the violence against their people and the land caused by British nuclear testing. We honour Eddie Koiki Mabo and his fellow defendants for litigating the High Court case that bears his name, which determined that common law of Australia is capable of recognising our laws and customs relating to land which the High Court calls native title. We honour the Wik peoples for their 1996 case in the High Court, which determined the First Peoples' native title rights could coexist over most lands within the Australian continent and surrounding islands. And we honour the thousands of First Peoples who told their stories of trauma and grief about being forcibly removed from their families, which shaped the 1997 Bringing Them Home report, which led to the national apology delivered by Prime Minister Kevin Rudd in this place in 2008. We honour Truganini and the leaders of the Palawa Nation, who made sure we will never forget the Tasmanian genocide. We honour the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria as they embark on historic treaty negotiation in Victoria. And we honour the 250 First Peoples leaders who worked together to produce the Uluru Statement from the Heart. As local custodians, we are aware that this 47th term of Parliament will be profoundly important for the First Peoples of Australia and for the nation. This government has committed to implementing the Uluru Statement from the heart, voice, treaty and truth-telling. We trust this Parliament will act responsibly in embracing all three key elements of the Uluru Statement from the heart. In the near future, this Parliament will consider the first element, which is legislation, for a referendum to enshrine a First Peoples voice to Parliament. In this nation's founding rule book, the Constitution, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are overwhelmingly seeking a voice, and every member of this Parliament should respect and act now. It can't be delayed anymore. But let's remember the voice is only the start of the implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which involves much more than this. Ultimately, there must be a national treaty. There must be truth-telling. The United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People should be implemented into Australian law. On behalf of our Ngambri and Ngunnawal custodians, I'd like to gift this Parliament with a freshly minted Coolaman, cut here from Kurrajong Hill to Parliament, to the 47th opening of Parliament. Here it is here. So in conclusion, I'd like to say, Yinja Mara, Mara Mara, Nia Nyinya Girama Maranya. Respect shapes us and lifts up the people. Guy Mbanya, Gurabari, welcome, Mandangu, Wurrugawurri. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Auntie Matilda and Paul. I now invite the Prime Minister to respond.
Well, Paul, how do you respond to that? You've made my first task on this sitting day very difficult indeed, but I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, on behalf of the Government of Australia, recommit to the implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. And I thank you, Paul and Auntie Matilda, for the wonderful welcome to country and honouring us with your presence here. I acknowledge Peter Dutton, the Leader of the Opposition. I acknowledge other members and senators who are here, but in particular, I acknowledge the record number of First Nations people who've been elected to represent their local constituencies in the House of Representatives and the Senate. It is a very good thing indeed. As Paul was recounting the heroes of reconciliation going back since people walked to the opening of Parliament down the road here, the old Parliament in 1927, the temporary one, but going through the history of struggle, it strikes me that with every one of those historical events, there is no one in this room, and I doubt whether there's anyone in Australia, who would say, gee, I wish that hadn't have happened. I wish that person hadn't have walked that journey. And here in today's ceremony, I'm reminded, as I walked here, that as Leader of the House of Representatives in 2008 with the incoming government, we were told that this ceremony originally couldn't take place because there was nothing in the standing orders to provide for it. And we went ahead and we did it. And today you have, I'm sure, every member of the House of Reps and Senate across the political spectrum who can be here is here. We have record numbers of the public are here, and no one says that shouldn't have happened. When Kevin Rudd delivered the apology, some said that that also shouldn't have happened. But there's no one today says that that did anything other than bring our nation together, that it was a unifying moment that was important not just for the stolen generations, not just for First Nations people. It was important for our nation. It was a moment. And we in this Parliament and as leaders of this country have another moment before us. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is a generous offer. Generous. It's a handout just saying, please, hold it. Hold it. That's all people are asking for. Where I was raised, my mum was very strong about manners. And the Uluru Statement from the Heart is, to my mind, just should be seen as good manners. that when you have issues that are affecting people, particularly people who have a history going back 65,000 years at least, the oldest continuous civilisation on the planet, a source of great national pride here in Australia, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you grasp that generous and gracious offer, which is about reconciliation, which is about acknowledging dispossession and colonisation and all of the tragedy and injustice that occurred to First Nations people as a result of the First Fleet arriving in 1788. Now, I know that Australians, in the way that they deal with their lives, are generous towards their neighbours, towards their community, and towards the whole country. We've seen that, and we see it replicated by the fact that people are wearing masks here today. People making decisions to look after each other, to look after the community. That's what we've seen. What the Uluru Statement from the Heart represents is an opportunity that must be seized, because if it isn't seized, it will be lost and we will be diminished. We have to seize that opportunity, and we need to seize it in this term, because it's now more than 5 years since Indigenous people came together with those remarkable words that say so much. It's not easy sometimes to bring together this Parliament. It's not easy to bring together First Nations people with a common view either. But that hard work was done. And voice, truth, treaty is the result. And we need to seize that opportunity, because the uncomfortable truth of our history isn't something that, is about blame. It is about, though, just acknowledging reality and what has occurred. And the great thing about the Uluru Statement from the Heart is that it doesn't seek to do that. It's not a negative statement. It's incredibly positive in the way that it advances. And we've seen that. I think it's no accident either that since 2008 we have seen such the record number of First Nations people represented here. 6 members alone in my caucus, but members of the Coalition, members of the Crossbench, members of the Greens Party. There has been that change occur, and that should be celebrated. So I say to everyone here, all of my parliamentary colleagues, don't miss the chance, because you're not here for that long. None of us will be. And when you're sitting on the porch thinking about what you did, you can either have a source of pride or a source of regret. No middle path. No middle path. Make it a source of pride. And we're not talking about, ancient history here. How good is it that in the last Parliament we had the Honourable Ken Wyatt, an Indigenous man, representing the Parliament as the Minister for Indigenous Affairs. And now we have, in the new government, Linda Burney representing the Minister for Indigenous Affairs. Linda Burney's story underlines not just how repugnant the days of legalised discrimination were, but how recent and how raw the wounds of our past still are. But her story does also remind us of the significant changes that have occurred just in my lifetime. In my lifetime, the 1967 referendum, the Mabo decision, the national apology, the welcome to country to mark the opening of Parliament. A testament to all those who worked so hard to awaken our national conscience. A testament to the courage and perseverance of First Nations leader, and that history inspires us to further progress. Linda is a very dear friend of mine, and there's no one I'm closer to in this show. And in part, her story inspires me, because if my beginnings and life had dealt with that hardship, you'd like to think you'd respond with generosity and kindness. But gee, you wouldn't blame someone for not doing that. And that's what strikes me about reconciliation and going forward. Matilda gave the first Welcome to Country ceremony here at this Parliament House. And she said this: "For thousands of years, our people have observed this protocol. It is a good and honest and a decent and human act to reach out and make sure everyone has a place and is welcome." It says a lot. May the humility and hope infused in her remarkable words be what guides us in the 47th Parliament.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I now call on the Leader of the Opposition to respond.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Can I say, Prime Minister, thank you very much for those warm words, the heartfelt words, and felt by everyone here, and I know that they were spoken very sincerely, so thank you very much for those fine words. I acknowledge the traditional owners of land on which we meet today, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people. Acknowledge their elders, past, present and emerging, and in particular the two wonderful elders who are here on the stage today. Auntie Matilda, you've graced this place for many years, and you bring not only great dignity but a great sense of humour as well, and the way in which you've represented your people, and at many ceremonies over a long period of time you've shown great distinction and great honour to your family and to your heritage. And Paul, of whom you're incredibly proud, thank you for your speech today as well, for the very powerful words and for the way in which you've provided leadership. And we've enjoyed very much the conversations and the way in which you've engaged with parliamentarians. I also want to acknowledge Linda Burney and the Shadow Minister Julian Lisa, to all of my parliamentary colleagues, to everyone here today to share in this moment. I want to make sure that as a Parliament and as a former Defence Minister, we also pay our respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men and women who have served our nation in the past and continue to do so today. Ladies and gentlemen, members of Parliament, senators, colleagues, friends and fellow Australians, as is tradition, we open Parliament with the Welcome to Country. The words we heard this morning carry a strong message of unity. A welcome to country made in the spirit of peace and a desire for harmony with all peoples of modern Australia. It reminded me how lucky we are to live in a peaceful and harmonious society, particularly compared to other parts of the world this very day. I recall the words of Noel Pearson, who said, "Our nation is in three parts. There is an ancient heritage written in the continent and the original culture painted on its land and seascapes. There is our British inheritance, the structures of government and society transported from the United Kingdom, fixing its foundation in the ancient soil. There is our multicultural achievement, a triumph of immigration that brought together the gifts of peoples and cultures from all over the globe, forming one Commonwealth. Noel Pearson also said Australians have an epic story. It's one of the greatest epic stories of this planet. We will recognise the scale of our story when we recognise each other. This, the 47th Parliament of Australia, will be an important one for Indigenous Australians, indeed for all Australians. It's a parliament with record levels of Indigenous representation, as the Prime Minister rightly pointed out. We're incredibly proud of the fact that we have 8 senators, 3 members of the House of Representatives as part of this 47th Parliament. I acknowledge my colleagues today, Liberal Senators Jacinta Price and Senator Karen Little. It's a great honour to share this stage with you. As we know, there is an incredible amount of work in front of us to improve the lives of Indigenous Australians, to do what past governments, both Liberal and Labor, and leaders in our communities have strived to do but fallen short in their endeavours. That is to lift standards of living, to generate better educational outcomes, to address domestic violence and crime, and to reduce mortality rates. So together, colleagues, let this 47th Parliament of Australia bring us together to implement practical changes which will improve the lives of Indigenous Australians. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Hello everyone. This morning we will conclude the Welcome to Country ceremony shortly with a smoking ceremony outside on the forecourt. The usher of the Black Rod and I will lead a procession out there with the performers and Auntie Matilda and Paul House, and also the Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, and their guests, and also the distinguished guests in the first 2 rows. After that, any members, senators or their guests who would like to join us, please do so outside. But before we do that, can you please join me in thanking Dr. Auntie Matilda House-Williams, Paul Girawa House, and their performers and dancers this morning. Thank you.
Ay, in the Marabala, boya, ninja, young, go bagariga. Ay, in the Marabala, bagariga, in the Marabala, bagariga. Ay, in the Marabala, moko kiri, bogongo, go didn't. Ay, in the Marabala. Ay, in the Marabala, didn't. In the Marabala, didn't. Inja marabala bogo kiri bogongo go didenda. Inja marabala didenda. Inja marabala didenda. Inja marabala boya ninja mogogo go didenda. Inja marabala didenda. Inja marabala didenda. Inja marabala boya ninja go bagariga. Inja marabala bagariga. Inja marabala bagariga.
That's it. I hope it makes me look better, is that right?